In this lesson, we're going to learn how to import our geometry by importing our landing pad. Alright, so we've finished modeling the ship here, and now what we want to do is we want to finish off our scene by creating or importing the landing pad that we're going to use for our scene. So to do this, let's simply go to our software icon or file, and we're going to go to import, but we're going to hover over it because we have this black arrow and we want to use merge. Now if you want to import a file like a .fbx file or a .obj, you would want to go ahead and use import. But in this case we want to import another .max file. So we're going to use merge, and this should bring up our scenes folder, and in our scenes folder at the very bottom you should see landing pad.max. Go ahead and select that, and we're going to hit open. Now in this you're going to see that we have several different names of this landing pad, several different objects, and we want to simply hit all and then hit OK. Alright, so this has been imported in, and we've got our textures and everything set up. We've got a material on this object. And another thing that you'll notice is that we have a line in our scene here, and this line is representing our hose. Now I want you to know that you can modify this line however you see fit, and it looks like I need to bring that up just a little bit to fit into this fueling station here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to move this line over just a little bit just to get it set into position. I'm going to set my move tool to my local direction just so I can move that. Now one thing that you'll notice about this hose line is that it's straight from this point to the plane. Okay, and this is going to help with the creation of bones for the animator, because our plan is to create some dynamics with this hose, but I have given it a general shape on how it's going to fit onto our ship here. Now we need to create the actual hose geometry, and I want to show you a way of doing that with a line and a shape. So let's go to our front view by hitting F on the keyboard, and we're going to go to our create panel, and we're going to choose circle. I'm going to create a circle that's about the size of the hose that I'm looking for here. So a radius of 2 is probably going to be a good number for us. And I also want you to notice the interpolation of this circle here. You'll notice it's pretty low res, and if yours is much smoother, it's because the steps are probably around 4 or so. So I want to take this down to 1, so that way I get this 8-sided hose, and this is just going to make it a lot easier on down the road for the animator or the person rigging this hose. Once you get a lot of vertices, that can be very difficult to deal with. So if we can make it easier on someone, that's always the best practice. So now how do we create a hose from this line and a circle? Well, what we can do is we can select the path or the line, and we can use a compound object called loft. So let's go ahead and go to our create panel. We're going to go into geometry, and we're going to expand our drop down box from standard primitives, and we're going to go down to compound objects. Now compound objects must be used with multiple objects. So you'll see that some of these are grayed out, and that means because that we don't have the proper objects selected to be able to use something like this. Okay, but you'll see here that loft is activated, and that's going to be usable because I have some shapes in my scene. Alright, so with our line selected, let's go to loft, and you'll see that we get some rollouts here. Our creation method is going to be very important in this process. Normally the way I like to create hoses is I'll create a line that represents the hose and its path that it needs to take. I always want to have the path selected first, and then I'll get the shape, because what will happen is it will take the shape and create it right along the line that I've already created, so that way I don't have to reposition the hose as I move on. So if we have the path, we're going to hit get shape, and once this is activated, you'll notice that we get this pick. Okay, and we can hover over this shape and you'll see that we get this pick icon. So we'll choose that, and you'll see that it creates that hose there. Now I want to take these surface parameters because I want to reduce the number of sides here, and we need to go into our geometry and we need to reduce that number of sides. Now you'll see here that we have our skin parameters that is going to control that. We have our shape steps, and then we also have our path steps. Now the shape steps is what's going to reduce the number of sides to our geometry. So I'm going to take this to 1 and leave it just that way. Our path steps are going to reduce the number of geometry that we have in between those vertices on our path. So if we set that down to 0, we have a path just like this. Now I'm going to leave it just the way it is here because this can be smoothed out, and I want to give the person who is doing the rigging for this hose to have full control. Now in this case it's going to be Delano, and we need to give him as much control as possible. Alright, so now that we have that, what we need to do is we need to work just a little bit with our line. Okay, and we can come in and select that line. You can see that's represented in orange here. Once that is selected, if I make any changes to the line, we should see the changes carried over to the lofted object. Okay, so I can reshape that if I need to. Alright, now you'll notice that the line itself, okay, is kind of just coming up into this blank space, and it's really not connected to anything. So we need to create some sort of cap that this is going to fit into. So we can do this very quickly by going to our standard primitives, and I'm going to go to cylinder, and I'm going to turn on auto grid and create a cylinder on this surface. Okay, so drag that out to a little bit bigger than the hose. We'll release and we'll drag down to give that some thickness there. And then I'm just going to put that into position, and I'm using my local reference coordinate system to move that along the surface of this object, or of this plane here. And I'm going to put that right in the center, and then I'll grab the line, okay, and I'm going to go to vertex mode. So we'll hit 1 on the keyboard to do that. And I'm just going to move this. Let's hit F3 to go back to a regular view. And I just want to position that a little bit better. Okay, so now let's go ahead and shape up this gas cap sort of thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and just select it, hit Alt-Q to isolate that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll convert this to editable poly. And let's start to create that shape. First off, I'm going to delete that polygon on top there. I don't need that. And then I'm going to hit Inset, create a little bit of a rim there. I don't need much of a rim. Okay. So we'll go to something like 0.3, and I'm going to extrude that up in a negative direction. Okay, now I want to make sure that I don't go above the boundaries of this. Hit OK. And then I want to create some sort of locking mechanism on the inside just to give it a little bit of a different shape. So I'm going to extrude that out in a positive direction. Hit OK on that. I'm going to go to edge mode and select these two edges on the corner and bring those back. Okay. Let's go to vertex mode. Now this is converting a selection. So if you have two edges selected, you'll notice that the move tool kind of bounces around and doesn't really know which one we want to move by. So what I can do is I can switch to the vertex mode and still keep this selection. So if I hold down Control and I select vertex mode, you'll notice that it selects the vertices of that edge that I had before. Let's go ahead and switch this to view, and let's constrain our vertices to edge, and then we'll drag that down in the Y. There we go. Alright, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and scale those together in the X just to kind of give that a little bit of a taper. And then I'm going to apply a turbo smooth to smooth that out to fit the rest of our object there. And let's go ahead and adjust that to 2, isoline display, and let's go ahead and start making some cuts just to tighten up some of the geometry. So especially right here on the rim, on the outside of that rim there, and then on the inside. I'm going to turn off the turbo smooth so I can see this. Here we go. And we'll do the same thing right here. Turn on turbo smooth, just see what that looks like. Okay. And I'm going to put one edge right there just to tighten this up some. Alright, very good. Now let's go to vertex mode on this. Let's turn off that turbo smooth. We need to adjust this topology. So I'm going to select a couple of vertices here. I have one vertex right here that is, or this vertex right here is kind of lost. Okay, I have a couple of polygons that are overlapping. So let's take this vertex here, or this polygon, to delete it, and let's get rid of all of these and delete those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that border on top and I'm going to cap this. So that's cleaning up that geometry, and then this is going to allow me to make the proper cuts that I need to take care of my topology. So let's go to vertex mode. I'm going to right click and cut from this vertex here to this one here. And if it doesn't cut, you may have to select the 2 vertices and just use connect and try that. Whenever you get into a tough spot like this with very odd angles, sometimes the cut tool doesn't exactly know what to do. So we'll do our best with using just connect. And then we'll try to cut those as we need to. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut straight across this way. There we go. Now if it doesn't cut, go ahead and try it just a little bit at a time. So we'll cut from here to here, and then we'll continue cutting around this way. Alright, now we've got this set of polygons right in here that are going to pose some issues. We've got this polygon that's a 6-sided polygon, so what I'm going to do is just create some simple triangles right in here, just like so, and then we'll cut from here up to here. Okay, and again, if it doesn't like to do that, you may have to try a different route. Okay, there we go. And we'll do the same thing here. Alright, very good. So now let's take a look at our turbo smooth. Let's make sure that everything has smoothed out properly. And it's looking pretty good. I think that's going to suffice for just kind of that gas cap that we need on the bottom. So let's change the color to black. Add a gray material to this. Here we go. Let's hit Alt and Q. So now we have a gas cap that is fitting to our hose here. Alright. So now that we have our modeling section finished, we've learned a lot of the different tools that 3ds Max has to offer, how to model just pretty much any shape that we can think of, and multiple ways that we can model those things. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move off into the next section for learning how to texture and work with materials. So thank you for being with me during the modeling section, and I'll see you in the next section.